All right, welcome to our lesson on rate word problems. So hopefully you got your notes up. It's the last set of notes in our packet. It's the last lesson of this particular unit. And we're going to start with the very first part, method 1. There's going to be two ways that we solve these problems. Basically, we're going to take everything we've learned from rates and ratios and put it all into use in one set of problems. So method 1 is we're going to make equivalent rates. So we're going to use our rules on how to write equivalent rates in order to solve our problems. So we are going to start with the information in the problem. So it said the ratio of the number of text messages sent by Lucas to the number of text messages sent by his sister is 3 to 4. So the units are always going to be important. So we're talking about text messages from Lucas and his sister. So I always like to write the units off to the side because it helps me in lining things up in my problem. So Lucas sent 3 messages to 4 for his sister. So that's my starting information. Then it said Lucas sent 18 messages. How many did his sister send? So if it was in a ratio of 3 to 4, and Lucas sent 18, remember Lucas is on the top here, so 18 messages. We want to know how many did his sister send. So an equivalent rate is going to be useful here because we can look for ways of getting from one number to the next. Remember, as we worked on this earlier in the week, you're always looking to see what could I multiply or divide to get from one number to the next, and I can use that to get to the next number. So I asked myself, what could I do to 3 to get to 18? Well, I could multiply it by 6. So in order for it to be an equivalent rate, I've got to do the same thing. I'm going to multiply by 6 down here. I'm going to treat both parts of my rate equally. 4 times 6 is 24 messages. Okay. All right. Next one. Heritage Middle School has 150 students. 2 out of 3 students in one class prefer gel toothpaste. So we have 2 out of 3, 2 prefer gel out of 3 total students. So our units are how many like gel toothpaste out of how many total students. So 2 like gel over 3 total. So I would just start with the information. And the key is it always comes in one sentence. So it's never a little bit of this one and a little bit of this one. It's always what came together. Now, we're always going to look for a second piece. So in the problem, it tells me that there are 150 students. Well, we either have the number of people who like the gel or the total. Well, it says predict how many students in the entire school prefer gel. So that means we don't know how many like gel. 150 is the total number of students. So since total was on the bottom, I'm going to put 150 total on the bottom. Okay. Now again, I look to see, can I go easily from one to the next? Well, to get from 3 to 150, I just multiply times 50. So I'm going to do the same thing up here. I'm simply going to multiply times 50. As long as I can treat both parts of that rate equally, they're going to stay equivalent to each other, which means we've been able to use our equivalent rates to get from one to the next. Here, 2 times 50 is 100 that preferred gel out of 150 total. So because we could find a way to get from 3 to 150 or 3 to 18 by multiplying, and sometimes it'll be dividing, by a whole number, we can use our equivalent rates. All right, next one. So equivalent rates are usually the easiest way to go because it requires the fewest calculations, but not every problem is going to work out that easily. So we're always going to check to see if we can do equivalent rates, but if we can't, our backup is to use unit rates. Start the problem the same way again. Read, figure out what are my units, and build that first rate. It says the Millards drove 105 miles on 4 gallons of gas. At this rate, how many miles can they drive on 6 gallons of gas? So again, start with the information that's given together. 105 miles, so I have miles and I have gallons. So 105 miles over 4 gallons. Now, I kind of already know that it's not going to go nicely, so I'm going to set mine up off to the side, and I'm going to show you why here in just a second. We were given one more piece of information, 6 gallons of gas. Well, gallons is on the bottom, so I'm going to put 6 gallons over here, which means we want to know how many miles. Now, here's why we have to use a slightly different method to get here. For some of us, going from 4 to 6 isn't something that we can easily do. Now, we could if we multiplied by a decimal, but a lot of us, that's not going to occur to us, or that's not going to be something that works easily for us. So the problem is going from a 4 to the 6 doesn't quite work. So here's our backup plan. Think back to ratio tables. When in doubt, go to a 1. Basically, we're going to turn this into a unit rate. We're going to find out how much for 1 gallon, because then I can very easily turn a 1 into a 6. So remember, to turn into a unit rate, we're always going to divide by our denominator. 105 divided by 4. Break out your calculator. And I get 26.25 miles in 1 gallon. So I found out my rate per gallon for 1 gallon. Now I want to go from 1 to 6. Well, to get from 1 to 6, I just multiply times 6. So I do the same thing up top. 26.25 times 6 gives me 157.5 miles. So because I wasn't easily able to go from my beginning to my ending target, I went to a unit rate in between and then used that to get to my next one. So next one says there are 810 calories in 3 scoops of vanilla ice cream. So we have calories and scoops. So I always like to write that off to the side because it helps me keep it from getting confused. I know what I'm focused on. In this case, it says 180 calories to 3 scoops. Or sorry, not 180, 810. 810 calories or 3 scoops. We want to know how much it is for 7 scoops. Well, just looking at this, I know going from a 3 to the 7 is not going to be something that's easy to do. So I know I'm probably going to need to go to a unit rate in between. So to get to a unit rate, remember we always divide by our denominator. We're going to divide by 3. 810 divided by 3 gives me 270 calories. 3 divided by 3 is 1 scoop. So 270 calories in 1 scoop. We want to go from 1 scoop to 7 scoops. Well, to get from 1 to 7, we just multiply times 7, and we do the same thing up top. 270 times 7 gives me 1,890 calories. So think of like a whole day's worth of calories in 7 scoops of ice cream. So we always start the problems the same way. We take that initial information and write it as a rate. We use the units to help me fill in the other information that I have. And then we look to try to get from one to the next. If I can find a nice way of just multiplying by something or dividing by something to get there, awesome. But if not, we go to that unit rate in between, and then we can multiply times however many we need. All right, that's the end of our video. So do not do the next page. Let's see who paid good attention. So don't worry about that next page in your note packet. That's for later this week. All I want you to do is this first page of this lesson. We did 2 examples on equivalent rates, 2 examples on unit rates, and now we're ready to put it all together.